All right, we will start with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. We're almost here. Tonight begins the holiday of Purim. Today is the fast of Esther. And so the question we want to answer today and talk about and really feel and understand is, why are we fasting today? Why are we fasting today? If anybody knows or has an idea, if you want to unmute and share, we'll start with whatever anybody knows. Anybody have any idea why we're fasting today? Beth Ann, why don't you unmute and you can tell us? You're still muted.
I got there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My understanding is it's Esther fasted and she asked the whole community to join in with her, and so we continue in her honor.
Okay, great. So yes and almost. Yes and almost. Okay, so that's how I always thought. That's what I grew up thinking. Like, we fasted because that's very clear in the Megillah. That is, you are talking about the very specific command to fast that Esther has on the Jewish people. That fast, however, was at Pesach. That was the preceding year. So when Haman cast his lots, he cast them and it was back in Pesach time. And when Esther calls for the fast, Mordechai, which this isn't in the text, objects and says, but it's going to Pesach, you can't fast for the Seder. And she was, well, let's put it this way. Either we fast and we have some Jewish people this year on Seder, or we're not going to have any Seders in the future because there won't be any Jewish people. So that fast is really happens at Pesach time. So that fast is interestingly not that fast. However, it's kind of for the same reason, but it's a different fast that we're fasting today. The fast today on the 13th of Adar is the fast that the Jewish people undertook on the day that the decree was in effect for all of the enemies of the Jewish people to come out and attack them. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This is a fascinating, chilling story that we need to understand and remind ourselves about. And we've talked about it in previous years, but just like everything that's important, it bears repeating. So if we look at what happened in the Purim story, I'm back on Beth Ann, on the Pesach, on the fasting. So before we talk about it, it's like, what is the purpose of fasting? It says fasting is, first of all, it makes us very uncomfortable. When we are fasting, even if you fast well, it diminishes us. It depletes us physically when we fast. And it's considered to be used to focus on teshuvah, on repentance, of fixing ourselves, of trying to get to a higher spiritual level. So when else do we fast to get on a higher spiritual levels? On Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, we also fast. So the Jewish people fast for lots of reasons. When we're trying to get higher, when we're in a place of pain and need, and we're trying to make ourselves as worthy spiritually as possible, because we understand that everything that exists in the physical world has a spiritual counterpart. If there's not a spiritual counterpart, it can't exist in the physical world. It's like your genetic code. If there's not a gene for it, it can't be. There is something that we can't see, but that is actually the cause for something being manifested physically. So we, in our day and age, can appreciate this much more. We understand germs, we understand genetics, we understand things you cannot see that cause things to manifest in the physical world. The spiritual structure is what causes a physical reality to exist. Fasting helps us switch more to strengthening the spiritual side as we weaken the physical side. As the physical gets kind of diminished, the spiritual has potential to be elevated. So we use fasting at times when it doesn't seem so logical also, which would be at this time. On the day of battle, or potential battle, because the Jewish people didn't know exactly what was going to happen on the 13th of Adar. It was the most worrisome day of all, because that's when the edict was that the Persians of all 127 provinces could go out and it could have a one-day all-out pogrom and kill and murder and annihilate every man, woman, and child. That's today. The Jewish people were in a big predicament. They didn't know what was going to happen. You would think it would be eat your Wheaties, get your gun, and go out and defend yourself. Instead, it was get your gun and fast. Don't eat, because the way this war is going to go is going to depend on the spiritual merit of the Jewish people, not our military might. Now, you still needed to go fight, but you had to have the spiritual base there first. So we're going to talk about how did that come about. We've been talking about Esther and her greatness, and she went into the king, and she's the Malka. She has strength and dignity, and she is elevated, and she's marching through, and she goes to the king, and she invites the king and Haman to a banquet, and then she invites them to a second one, and then she says, this man, this wicked Haman, he's the one who wants to destroy me and our people, etc. And then we know Haman is hanged on the very gallows that he had built for Mordechai, and that should be the end of the story. Except that it's not, because it didn't really work. It didn't work completely. It didn't work to eliminate actually the more important threat. Yes, Haman was gone, but the edict still stood. And that's where the Jewish people are at. If you have a Chumash, you can see what happens, and we're going to see a very, very different Esther at this point. We're going to see a very, very different Esther. If you have the Stone Chumash, it's on page 1258, and it's the beginning of chapter 8. Oh, it's the end of chapter 7, which is verses 9 and 10, and the king Achashverosh says, hang him on it, meaning hang Haman on the gallows. So they hanged Haman on the gallows, which he had prepared for Mordechai, and the king's anger abated, meaning Achashverosh now was not concerned, because he only cared about, not the Jews, he only cared about his queen Esther. Now that Esther's life was not at risk because Haman was going to do something to her, he didn't really care. He didn't care. And now we see a very big change. So theoretically, the Megillah should be over right now. Everything's great. Haman has been hanged. This is how it ends in the Purim plays that we do in Sunday school. Yay, now let's have our Hamantash and everything's all good. Except guess what? It is not good, because the next chapter, chapter 8, starts out that after Achashverosh is going to give Haman's estate to Queen Esther. Mordechai presents himself to the king. The king slips off his signet ring, which he had removed from Haman, and gave it to Mordechai. And Esther put Mordechai in charge of Haman's estate. Everything looks great until we get to verse 3, because we've got a big problem. There is an edict out now giving permission, authority, everything else for people in 127 provinces to go out and murder the Jews on the 13th of Adar. And now Esther is different. Starting in verse 3, Esther yet again spoke to the king, and this time what does she do? Collapsed at his feet and cried and begged him to avert the evil intention of Haman the Agagite and his scheme with which he had plotted against the Jews. Now she is begging, because she knows now they're in a really dangerous place. And the truth is, she's lost her ace up her sleeves. She was hoping that the demise of Haman would spread out and the king would nullify Haman's decree as well. What good does it do if Mordechai becomes like the executor of Haman's estate, if Mordechai is also a Jew and is going to be murdered along with everybody else? It doesn't help anything. So at that point, she says, verse 5, if it pleases the king, and if I have won his favor, and the proposal seems proper in the king's opinion, and I be pleasing to him, and now she's like all this kind of begging, let a decree be written to countermand those dispatches devised by Haman, the son of Hamadassah the Agagite, which he wrote, ordering the destruction of the Jews, who are in all the king's provinces. For how can I bear to witness the disaster which will befall my people? How can I bear to witness the destruction of my relatives? And what is Ahasuerus' response? You're right, Esther. I can't believe it. Of course, I'm going to make a decree. We're going to undo that. I'll save you and your people. That was wicked. That was terrible. I was so wrong. I've been educated. Now I know. No, no, no. Ahasuerus is, you know what? I've already given Haman's estate to Esther, and Haman's been hanged. You can write about the Jews whatever you want, but you can't countermand my first edict because my edicts can't be countermanded. So that's staying on the books. Well, now we have a big problem. So so the king says, well, you can do whatever you want other than countermanding. So the only thing they can do is to write an equally forceful edict that says the Jews can defend themselves, not that the Jews can attack, that the Jews can defend themselves. So you think, oh, Mazel Tov. Okay, that's a great thing. You can defend yourself when all of these people and all of these goons come after you. And so that's exactly what Mordechai does. And he has to make it as parallel as possible to the other edict in order at least to cause some confusion amongst the people in the provinces of Persia. So now the Persians are going to be presented with two things on the ballot. You can destroy all the Jews and take everything from them, and the Jews can defend themselves and take everything from you. So then the question is, whose side are you going to show up on when it comes to the 13th of Adar? How are you going to read the political winds? Who's really the winner here? So Mordechai and Esther are forced to put in a position to have to present themselves as being very high up in the king's love and esteem, which they kind of are, but in a weird way, in a very unhelpful way. And yet there are all these people throughout Persia who have this edict on the 13th. Our fast today is because of the trepidation of not knowing how today is going to go. We're waiting to find out, because then we're going to find out how many people do come out against the Jews. It's like, well, the Jewish people, let's put it this way, they killed 75,000 Persians. That's a lot of people in one day, which means there was quite an uprising, quite an outpouring, quite an attempted pogrom against the Jewish people. We didn't know how it was going to go. Everything was just like, wait and see, and today's the day. It's only after they are victorious that tomorrow, that's why tomorrow is Purim, but today is the fast. So we are here with that same situation, because the truth is, ladies, that edict never went away. That edict to destroy the Jewish people still exists, and there are many people who are trying to implement it. And in a way, it was easier in the time of Purim, because there was one clear enemy, which was all the anti-Semites of Persia, who were the people who signed up with Haman's belief system. In today's world, remember that terrible game in, I don't know, we played in elementary school, is the worst game ever, dodgeball. Do you remember dodgeball? Where you stand in the center and the people just throw balls at you and you try not to get hit, or you have to catch it and throw it back or something. I was never one of the lucky ones to ever catch it. I just got bombarded and hit by all these balls. And it didn't matter which way you were facing, because you were standing in a circle. So, and the circle, then that meant that while you were protecting your front, then somebody else was hitting you from the back. So that's where the Jewish people are today. We've got people, and I'm sorry for the political part, there are people on the right, there are people on the left, there are Islamic extremists, there are Black radicals, there are leftist, critical racial theory folks who are out to destroy the Jewish people. And you can say it's about Israel. It's not about Israel. It is about Israel. On one hand, on the right, it's like, no, the Jews are ruining the whiteness of America. And on the other side, it's no, the Jews are trying to be white and they're usurping whiteness when really they are not white, or they're acting white. We've got it, dodgeball. And so everybody's staying in their place, looking in one direction, saying it's coming from them. And at the same time, it's coming from many, many sources. And we're asleep. We are asleep. This is our situation. Interestingly, when Haman goes to Ahasuerus and he says that there's Yeshno, there is a certain people. That word Yeshno can also be read as the word yashen, which means to be sleeping. There is a sleeping people. And when the people are asleep, you can do anything you want to them because they're not paying attention. Since the Jewish people are asleep. Since we're asleep to who we are as Jewish people, we're asleep to the threats, we're asleep. Says we need to wake up. Says fasting is our time to wake ourselves up. And when we are awake, we're supposed to understand what the threat is. But then our challenge is, what are we supposed to do about it? What are we supposed to do about it? Says, and our answer to it today is fasting. And our answer to it is acts of kindness between us and other people, because there is a force. And that force is called the force of the Yetzerhara. The force of the Yetzerhara, and the way it works is, if you can imagine this scenario, that there is think of all the spiritual energy in the world, in the cosmos, and there are two like straws, two pipes, and it can either go on one side or the other. And to the extent it goes to one side, it doesn't go to the other. It goes in this kind of a relationship. It says this is the relationship in the spiritual world between those who want the Jewish people and those who want to destroy the Jewish people. It goes all the way back, all the way back, all the way back to when Rebecca was pregnant with Jacob and Esau. When she was pregnant, and it says that there was fighting in her womb, and she goes to find out what is the problem. And if you want to go in your Chumash to Bereshit, to Genesis, sorry, that wasn't it, to Genesis chapter 25, verse 23, it's on page 125. It says, Hashem said to her, Rebecca, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 regimes from your inside shall be separated. The might will pass from one regime to the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. The elder, meaning Esau, will serve the younger, Jacob. Unless Jacob is not performing what he's supposed to do, which is reiterated in the blessing that Isaac gives to Jacob, or actually gives to Esau after Jacob gets the primary blessing, is that Isaac gives a blessing and says, this is on page 141, chapter 27, verse 39 and 40. So Isaac, his father, answered, this is to Esau, and said to him, behold, of the fatness of the earth shall be your dwelling, and of the dew of the heavens from above. By your sword shall you live, but your brother you shall serve. Yet it shall be, when you are aggrieved, you may cast off his yoke from upon your neck. It says, what's the being aggrieved? You can be aggrieved if Jacob, the Jewish people, are not doing what they're supposed to do. Then you don't have to, you can do what you want. And that this is the equation. Now, how does this work? Like, what does this mean? So we talked about on Tuesday, we talked about the power, the acts of kindness. So this, we're going to talk about the power of not speaking Lashon Hara. So there are many people, when there is a fast day, not only do they refrain from eating and drinking, but they also refrain from speaking. It's called a ta'anit dibur, a fast of speech. Well, here I am talking, so I'm obviously not having a fast of speech, and we're not going to have a fast of speech. But you can still have a fast of speech of not speaking Lashon Hara. Okay, so you can say, I'm going to talk, but all of my words are going to be positive. They are no Lashon Hara is specifically about any Jewish person. It says, why is this? Why is this? It says, so this is how the spiritual equation works in the cosmos. It's a little strange. We have our spiritual energy at the top, and it's going one place or another. How does it get determined which way it's going to go? It says, when the Jewish people speak Lashon, I'm sorry, when the Jewish people are not speaking Lashon Hara, something amazing happens. It says, what is Lashon Hara ultimately? Lashon Hara ultimately is saying negative true things about other people. Negative true things. It's not false things. That's slander. Negative true things is Lashon Hara. When we do that, we are basically in the role of being prosecutors, little mini prosecutors of other people. Did you hear she said that? She did that one. all of that, we're prosecuting other people. It says when we open our mouths to prosecute other people, we are allowing the mouth of the prosecutor to open also. Who is the prosecutor? The Yetzerhara. So the Yetzerhara, Satan, Esav, evil inclination, it's all one thing that wears many hats. The first hat it wears is the hat of being a tempter, tempting us to do the wrong thing. And then when we do the wrong thing, it's the one that accuses us of doing the wrong thing and then prosecutes us for doing the wrong thing and then carries out the punishment. But just like in a legal situation, a legal scenario, if there's no prosecutor, if the prosecutor is not empowered to open up the case, it doesn't matter how thick the file is of wrongdoing. If I can't get to your file, I can't prosecute you. Hold on one second. The Jewish people can be guilty of doing many, many wrong things. But if we don't speak Lashon Hara, it's like it's called silencing the accuser, silencing the prosecutor. We cannot open the mouth of the prosecutor who would like to say, did you see what she did? Says like, no, I can't say anything because she doesn't say anything about other people who do the wrong thing. This is our ultimate protection. It's to silence the accuser. When that happens and the voice of the accuser is silenced, we receive the flow of divine energy. When we open our mouths of the accuser opens its mouth against us and takes the energy over to the dark side. And that is the mechanism for how the energy goes one way or the other. So if we're trying to affect how is this battle going to go, we need to suck the energy out of the other side. How do we suck the energy out of the other side? By making sure we don't lose the energy. How do we lose the energy? By speaking Lashon Hara and opening up the mouths of the prosecutor. It's a little bit of a complicated system, so let me hear your questions or comments about that so we make sure that we understand all that. Anybody? Did I make sense?
I guess I have a
Yes,
question.
Patricia. Yes, please.
I understand what you're saying. I just don't see how it would ever be possible to on a large scale of Jewish
make it
people.
work.
Yeah,
Yes.
it makes me a little nervous that.
Yes, it's like, oh my gosh, that's even a worse answer. Yeah, it's like, okay, now how are we going to do this? So here's two things. One is that we have what's called like a tipping point. So whenever we talk about how many people need to be involved in something before it makes it like tip, it's not everybody, but it for sure has to be the people who know. The people who know for sure need to be on board. If people are ignorant, okay, so they don't know. But the people who do know, they need to do it. Because then it's like ignorant, then you can say in a way ignorance is bliss, but to know and to not do, that's a big problem. So that's part of it. Has to do with the tipping point. The other is we do things to help us get there. The acts of kindness help us blunt the Lashon Hara. Because it's very hard at the same time you're delivering a cookie and a treat to somebody at the very same moment in the same breath to say something nasty about them. You know, I just took something special over to my friend who's like such a jerk. Like, would you really say that? It's a little bit, it doesn't really go. So when we do things to help on the chesed, it's almost like a redirecting our minds into a different place, because if we're thinking good thoughts and thinking about doing things nice for other people, it's harder at the same moment to be thinking something nasty. It just makes it a little bit more difficult. So this is the day, is like during your lunch hour, instead of eating, send emails, make phone calls, say nice things to people, reach out, say hello, I'm thinking about you, want to wish you a happy Purim. It doesn't have to be like a whole big Megillah, literally. It doesn't need to be a whole big story. Just reaching out, because the more our minds are on that path, the more it puts us in that place. And it's not that you have to do it for 24 hours a day. Like how many positive conversations does it take to get us in a positive mood? So they talk about in relationships that you have to have 10, thank you, Karen, I'll call you, thank you for raising your hand, that you have to have, in a relationship, you have to have 10 positive conversations to every one negative one. So I think that if I have 10 positive conversations today, I'm going to be in a positive mood, and it's just going to be less likely that I'm going to open my mouth in that way. And I have a much better chance. Does that help, Patricia, to understand that? Okay, but yeah, and we are hopeful. Karen, why don't you unmute, and I want to hear what you have to say.
Hi all, thank you. I hope I missed a little bit in the beginning, but for some reason, this reminds me of something I've struggled with, which is the best defense is no defense. And when someone's speaking an untruth and you want to defend, how does that correlate with this? Maybe I'll ask that question.
Yes, so actually you have to be very careful with that, because it depends who you're talking to. Because oftentimes if somebody's saying something negative and you want to defend them, it just irritates the person and ups the ante, and they're going to just give you more proof about why you're wrong and why they're right. So sometimes it's not a good way to go. It can be better to not listen to it and not accept it. And it's different when you're on you can do all sorts of things, and you can even lie. You can lie because this is for the sake of peace. You can say, like I hear my mother calling, I'm sorry. Your phone can just go dead. My cell phone drops calls all the time. It's funny how that happened just in the middle of that conversation. Mm-hmm. You can change the subject, or you can just respond with a lot of pain and sadness. Like that really hurts me to hear that, because the person who's telling you Lashon Hara, they're trying to either get you on their side, or they're trying to get a rise out of you, or there's some payoff for them. If we don't give them the payoff, they usually tend to stop. If it's an in-person conversation, the best strategy is to look down and not move, because very few people can talk to somebody who is not looking them in the eye and is not responding. So if you were talking to me and I was just like, you're just going to stop, because you have no audience. People need an audience for this, and it's a bad habit. So those are some of the strategies, and one has to have strategies in their back pocket to kind of be ready for this, because it's going to come. And we even may find some people have a thing like with their friends that they even have like a little code with their friends that if they agree, if I start speaking Lashon Hara, stop me. Just say LH, Lashon Hara, or is that LH? Is that Lashon Hara? Often people will say, well, this is probably Lashon Hara, but, or I remember my friend Sue Gerson, used to be the Rebbitzin at Road of Shalom, would have people actually say to her, can I tell you some Lashon Hara? And she was like, no, it's like people are kind of funny. So people are like, well, this might be Lashon Hara, but it's true. It's like, well, that's the definition of Lashon Hara. It's true. So it's a challenge. So we need to have a strategy for engaging with other people. And for sure, we have to have a strategy for ourselves on how we're not going to do it. And the best way is through switching our station to the station of the Chesed station. Because again, when we are engaged in a positive way with somebody, it tends to at least put on some rose-colored glasses, which is, we talk about like in the legal system, that's bad. That's called bribery. But we want to bribe ourselves to be positive towards our friends and neighbors and family members. Unless you are called to a court of law, our goal is to have rose-colored glasses on people. We are supposed to. Now, this doesn't mean putting up with severe abuse or anything like that. Then you need to be safe. You need to take care of yourself. But we're talking about just like the ordinary stuff. We need to have rose-colored glasses on. That should be our mask. Maybe that should be our mask tonight, is some rose-colored glasses, how to see the world and the people in our lives in that way. Yeah. Okay, any other thoughts or questions?
Yes, can I ask? It's Gabi.
Yes, Gabi.
Thank you. Sorry I was late and I got into right away. You were explaining everything, but I would love to write at the beginning of the Lashon Hara you started. I think I was lucky to get to the beginning. what you said, the prosecutor and the energy divine and the formula. Do you mind repeating it one more time? It's like 2-3 sentences or not?
I'll say it in summary, and then after that,
Sure.
Wendy, it'll be your turn. Thank you. So we talked about that the whole force, this negative force, Satan, Esau, the Yetzerhara, all of these things are really just like the negative force. They take different names and they have like slightly different, they show up with wearing different hats. The first hat is to tempt you to do the wrong thing. Once they succeed in doing that, then it shows up as the force that says they did the wrong thing. And the third is, and I'm going to prosecute you and take you to the court for doing the wrong thing. And the fourth is carrying out the judgment against. So what we're trying to do is, do we do the wrong thing? Are we tempted to do the wrong thing? Yes. Do we do the wrong thing? Yes. So where can we stop the system? Where's our only hope of stopping the system? Is to keep it from the prosecutor from prosecuting. And there's only one way to keep the prosecutor from prosecuting, to keep the file sealed and closed. I can have a file this thick of all my wrongdoings, but if it never goes to court, I'm okay. So I can only stop the prosecutor, and the only way I can stop the prosecutor is midah keneged midah, measure for measure. If I'm not a prosecutor and I keep my mouth shut on prosecuting other people, which is basically what Lashon Hara is, then the prosecutor, the ultimate prosecutor, cannot prosecute me, cannot prosecute the Jewish people. And what we're interested in today is not the prosecutor or the individual. It's not like I'm trying to be saved. I mean, I would like to be saved. Our goal is communal, collective, the Jewish people to be saved. How do we get how do we not lose the flow of divine energy? Because as Rivka was told, the might will pass from one to the other. It's not going to be everybody can live happily ever after, because these are two incompatible things. The existence of the Jewish people and the destruction of the Jewish people are incompatible realities. So it's going to be this way or this way. And we're going to see in a minute that Haman's wife Zeresh, as an Amalekite also, a descendant of King Agag also, and also from the descendant of Esau, she knew that equation, and she warns her husband Haman that he's going to go down because of who Mordechai is. So we're going to get to that in just a moment. So Gabi, hopefully that answers your question somewhat. And now Wendy.
Thank you.
Thanks. What has helped me is when I become conscious that I am starting to be judgmental, I try to consciously shift from judgment to gratitude.
Very good. Judgment to gratitude is huge.
Okay, that's all.
Beautiful. Yes. And it can be gratitude even for that person. It says that we are supposed to be grateful because people are not one-dimensional. You can have an issue with somebody and you can also be grateful for something about them. You know, they have many great qualities. That's why the command to us is Dan et kol ha'adam l'kaf zechut. Judge the entire person to the side of merit. That's considered fair. Because what we tend to do is zero in, understandably, on the thing or even a cluster of things that is wrong, that we disapprove of, that's blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't represent the whole person. And if we had it in a bigger context and we were grateful for the other things about them, then we would have a more generous, compassionate approach to them. And again, we're not talking about mass murderers, and there is a place where we're not supposed to have compassion. But in our ordinary relationships, we are. So thank you, Wendy. That's exactly right, to switch that, because our thoughts determine our speech and our speech determine our thoughts. So if we can get on to, and our actions determine our feelings, which is why we have acts of kindness, of do something physical. It's actually very hard to sometimes, it sounds like you do this more successfully. It's sometimes very hard to change our thoughts because our thoughts get in a rut, they get on a path, and they're very hard to corral, contain, and redirect. However, our actions are much easier to work with. I can make a phone call, I can write a note, I can send a message, I can send a text, I can send shalach manas. When I do something or say something and put it in the realm of action, I have more control over that. And those actions trigger different thoughts. So to be able to find all the ways that I can to redirect myself through a change to gratitude, judging people more favorably, just saying for my own self-protection, I don't want to open up the mouth of the prosecutor. Pure and simple. It's self-serving. It is very self-serving. Maybe I'm not on such a high level to get to such a great place on how I feel about people. It's like, okay, if you can't get there that way, then get there this way. Think about what's at stake, and then maybe you'll get there. So it helps to have a crisis. So again, that's like why Jewish people, why do we come together when there's a crisis? All of a sudden, the people who we didn't want to have 2 minutes with, we can be buddy with at a rally to, if Israel is being threatened or the Jewish, some catastrophe happens to the Jewish people. It's like, now you're getting along with them? Did anything change? It's like, no, I'm operating at a different channel. I'm on a different channel. And so when we come down to it, the ultimate channel is our actual existence. And somehow that thread of actual existence brought everybody together really, really well. So when you are in a communal fast and you're kind of, anytime people are all in something together, as we see, it has the potential to either bring people together or have each man for himself. It has the possibility, same thing if there's trauma in a family. God forbid, if a child is sick in a family, it can either bring the family together or the parents get divorced. I mean, it's like, how does that happen? It's because that stress changes people to a different, the stress is going to do something. It for sure doesn't continue on as it was. It changes things. The question is, what's the change going to be? So when we feel the pressure, we feel the decree, we feel the sense of vulnerability, because we are incredibly vulnerable. We know, it's like, what is our ultimate defense? Yes, we need the ADL. Yes, we need different organizations. Yes, we need call your congressman, all these other things. Yes, we need the IDF. Then it's not going to help if there is not the spiritual structure that's directing the ultimate flow of energy. I know that sounds very esoteric, but that's just really the way it is. You know, the human body is kind of esoteric too. How do genes really work? I don't really get genetics. I've never seen a germ. I've never seen a coronavirus. I've never seen all of this, but clearly all those things manifest in physical reality. And we are very aware that they exist, and a smart person is someone who operates accordingly. So when you know what the system is, then you can say, okay, I know what my role is here. My role is to do this and to encourage and inspire as many other people to take the responsibility as well. Now we're going to see where Zeresh, Haman's evil wife, basically has some words of prophecy for her dear darling husband Haman. So if you go to the Megillah, and this is after Esther has invited Haman to come to the banquet with Achashverosh, but what also is happening now in parallel is that King Achashverosh has remembered that he forgot to reward Mordechai for saving his life. Mordechai had overheard plots to assassinate Achashverosh, and he made the plot known to Esther, and Esther took it to the king in Mordechai's name, gave credit, and the 2 people who were plotting were executed, and Achashverosh was saved. And one night, Achashverosh can't sleep, and this is the one merit Achashverosh has. It says there was something bothering him. He couldn't sleep. Now I ask you, how many of you have a sleepless night and think for a moment that maybe the reason you can't sleep is because you forgot to express gratitude to somebody? Does anybody think that? It's like, no, it's like, you know, the sickness, the war, social unrest, my job. It's like my kids, my parents, my whoever. Those are the things that keep us up at night. Not like, you know what, did I forget to thank somebody? That's terrible. Well, that's what woke up Achashverosh. His one merit was that. And when he did that, and he woke up and had his chronicles brought to him, and he saw that he had forgotten to reward Mordechai for saving him. And that's what sets in motion that reward. And Haman is humiliated because when he goes to Achashverosh to talk about the plan to hang Mordechai, the king says to Haman, so what should the king do for someone who needs to be rewarded and honored by the king? And Haman, thinking it's him, says like, oh, he should ride the horse and wear the king's crown and this, and like this whole thing. And Ahasuerus goes, great, do that for Mordechai the Jew. And so Haman, of course, is humiliated and mortified. And you, Haman, you be the one to walk him through the streets of Shushan saying, and such is done to the man who is going to be honored by the king. So when he comes home to his wife, talk about a bad day at the office, he had this big plan for hanging Haman and hanging Mordechai. Mordechai's getting ready to be honored and is honored. And he's also invited to this royal banquet. His wife Zeresh says to him, okay, this is not going to work out so well. So what does she say to him? Hold on one second. The wrong page. So Haman, this is on page 1258, chapter 6, verse 13, or verse 12. Mordechai returned to the king's gate, but Haman hurried home, despondent and with his head covered. Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that happened to him, and his advisors and his wife said to him, if Mordechai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of Jewish descent, you will not prevail against him, but will undoubtedly fall before him. And then it says, while they were still talking with him, the king's chamberlains arrived, and they hurried to bring Haman to the banquet, which Esther had arranged. So we see this thing here is like, on one hand, Haman is going up, and on the other hand, his wife is like, nope, if Mordecai is going up, there's only one direction you're going, which is down. And she wasn't a wife who hated her husband. She loved him, whatever that means. She was the one who had encouraged him to build the gallows for Mordecai and to hang him on it. But she saw, it's like, okay, if Mordecai's doing this, guess what you're doing? You're going down. And so her words become prophetic. Thoughts or questions? Okay. So here we have our, this story is unfolding here, and we have like this shift in energy, and the shift in energy is an equation that says that this is going to be forever, that this is the force that exists, and it actually exists to keep the Jewish people Jewish. It keeps the force that keeps us in our game so that we don't completely assimilate and disappear. That when we start to do the wrong thing, the force rises up, and it will come to at least get our attention, if not start to destroy us. So there's a famous line that says, if the Jews do not make Kiddush, our enemies will make Havdalah. So it says, which is obviously a reference to Shabbos, but it means if the Jewish people do not make Kiddush and make themselves sanctified according to what we're supposed to be doing in the Torah, then the enemies will make Havdalah, meaning they will separate us and distinguish between us and them, and will try to get rid of us. And it doesn't matter how long we've lived in the country. You can have been in Spain, you could have been in Poland, you could have been in Germany, you could have been any of these places, Iran, Iraq, for thousands of years. Doesn't matter. You will be made other, and there will be an attempt to destroy you. And that will wake us up and like, wait, what are we supposed to be doing? So this edict is in effect all the time. And today we are fasting on it to kind of get ourselves in the right frame of mind and realize what our strategy is to get out of it. The joke along the way is that, what is the name of this holiday? It's called Purim. So it's called Purim. Why? It says Purim is because Haman cast lots. He peel pur, which is a Persian term. Pur means lots or a lottery. He cast lots to see what was going to be an auspicious time to kill the Jews. And he landed on the month of Adar, which was the month that Moshe died. So that's like not a good month for the Jewish people. But he didn't know also that was the same month, the same day that Moshe was born. So on the 7th of Adar is both his birthday and his Yortzeit, the day that he died. And this is an auspicious time for the Jewish people. And it is the month before Pesach. It's an auspicious time for the Jewish people. So he thought he found like, this is like the worst month ever. And I'm casting Pur. I'm casting this lot. However, Pur in Persian means lottery, but in Hebrew, it's Goral. Okay, Goral is what is a lottery or chance or that kind of thing. In Hebrew, Pur comes from the Hebrew word, I'll say it right here, hefer, hefer, and it means to nullify. It means to remove, to break, or to contravene. So on one hand, we have Haman is casting a Persian pur, that's determining when the Jewish people are going to be destroyed. But the Jewish people have that same word, which means to negate it. So while he's casting, it's like casting the what's the word? The slipping mind. I'm hungry. It's like he's casting the weapon and the antidote at the same time to the Jewish people. That's funny. Okay, it's like saying the same word for medicine is the same word for disease is medicine. It's like, oh, that's funny. So I'm trying to find the medicine for the Jews. Now I'm trying to find the time to find the time to destroy them. It's like it's both, which is why Purim is plural. So Pur, this holiday should just be called Pur. If we're talking about Haman's casting of lot, then it should just be called Pur, because that's what he did. He cast the lot. It says he peeled Pur. But if we also have Pur meaning the nullification and turning it over his decree, then we have that Pur as well, which gives us Purim. We have both of them. And that's what's funny, is that we have both at the same time. And that's what a joke is, it's like where you have, something is like, it was going this way and then it goes that way. That's what makes something funny. You're walking down the street. That's why timing in a joke is so important, because you have to have the person that the people you're telling the joke to on the path of a certain direction, and the jokes I can't tell. And then you switch it and something different happens that makes then people laugh. So laughter is a uniquely human experience because it requires the ability to see that switch. And that's what Purim is. And that's why we laugh. We, in a way, shouldn't be laughing. This was the death decree of the Jewish people. On the other hand, it was also the day that was completely overturned. This is the Holocaust that didn't happen. Can you imagine our joy if we woke up tomorrow and we woke up like from a bad dream and found out that actually the Holocaust didn't happen? That was just a really, really bad movie and a bad dream. It didn't happen. We would be giddy. We'd be crying and laughing and shrieking and celebrating and hugging and dancing and jumping. We wouldn't know what to do with ourselves. And the joy is only in comparison to how much fear and anxiety and threat there was. Someone who doesn't feel the threat can't feel the joy. Someone who feels the threat can feel the joy when it is overturned. So that's our Purim, is that we know what was at stake and we know what didn't happen. And we know how the Jewish people were saved. So that's our fast today, is focusing on that and focusing on what our strategy is. And our strategy is going to be the exact same as it was then. Bring the Jewish people together, have them do acts of kindness for one another. Do not speak Lashon Hara. Do not empower that force. That's the only way we're going to have the force. The Jewish people during that time of when the decree went out, and the 13th of Adar, were not focused on military strategy, and they were not focused on drilling with their swords and sabers. That's not what they were doing. They were praying, they were learning Torah, they were reaffirming their commitment to Jewish life, they were being kind to one another, they weren't speaking Lashon Hara, and they were doing everything they could to fill the spiritual blessings, energy onto their side so that they could be victorious. We even have an example in Jewish history. So King Ahab, which you probably know that name of Ahab, maybe probably know it from Moby Dick, is probably most American people's connection with King Ahab. Ahab and Jezebel, the two most wicked king and queen that the Jewish people have ever had. They were horrible people. So King Ahab was successful in all of his military ventures, not just successful, but he didn't lose any soldiers. No Jews died in his wars. It's like, how did that happen? And King David, who was virtuous and righteous, says he won also, but many, many people died. It's like, how does that happen? It says in the time of King Ahab, people did not speak Lashon Hara about each other, and they had the spiritual might that translated into that physical success. King David's time, people were smart, they studied Torah, but they spoke Lashon Hara. So when it comes down to it, yes, it would be great if all the Jewish people were doing everything right. That would be amazing. And talk about, well, we're never going to get there. It's like, well, can we get to not speaking Lashon Hara? And can we get a critical mass of Jewish people who are aware of this? This is why the Jewish Experience had the Clean Speech Colorado, and not speaking Lashon Hara, that and saying positive words about other people. We think it's just like a nice to have. It makes friendships easier, makes the world a happier place. The impact of that is way greater. It's like a child, telling them, you brush your teeth so you can have a pretty smile. You wash your hands so you can have clean, fresh smelling hands. Like, no, you brush your teeth so you can keep your teeth for your life so they don't rot out of your head. And you wash your hands so you don't get sick. But we don't tell them that story. So they get on their chart, they get their, like, I washed my hands star and I brushed my teeth star. And so we think and that's what we think about what we're doing. Oh, if I don't speak Lashon Hara, that just makes me like a nicer person. It's like, yes, but that's not why. It's because we are directing the spiritual energy for the entire creation. And we are in charge of that. And thank God, because it's something that's within our power to do. If it had to be, you must be able to fight the greatest battles, like we would be up a creek. But that's not where our battle comes from. Our battle is this battle of this force that is in us. Thoughts, questions, impressions, concerns about the Jewish people. We can do it. And now we have representatives from people around the world here. So we've not the whole world, but we have from the United States here. So we have Penina in Lakewood. We have Karen in Alaska. We have people, around who are able to help in different counties of Colorado. And we create, things are catching. It's not just bad things that go viral. Good things go viral too. Is that when we set a pattern in motion, it ripples out. And we shouldn't be discouraged and think it's not making a difference. That too is the voice of the Yetzerhara saying, you think that you're going to change the whole world politic by you're not speaking Lashon Hara? You've got to be kidding. And then you think like, that's right. That sounds pretty stupid and naive. You know what? You're right. I think I will speak Lashon Hara. So it says the voice of the Yetzerhara tries to tell us that what we're doing doesn't make a difference. But don't listen to that voice. Don't listen to that voice. Okay.
Thank you, Ellyn. This was so amazing to listen.
Amazing.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So truly use the day. So it says we're so conscious of our mouths and that we're not eating. So all I keep thinking is like, oh, I'm going to go get a drink. I'm going to go have a snack. So every time I think about like what I would like to put into my mouth, maybe I can use that same opportunity to say, what would I like to come out of my mouth right now? And go call somebody, send a text, send a message, do something and change that energy and make something go viral.
Thank you.
That would be
Terrific.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
I've been thinking about how this all applies to our current uncivil society.
Yes.
And how, well, just on a personal level, we have friends who we disagree with politically,
Yes.
but we try to look at them as a whole person, as you were saying, and not just as their political opinions, so that you can continue a friendship and with someone who you disagree with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Then we would like to be in a place like Hillel and Shammai. Says they disagreed on halacha, they disagreed, and we know that they maintained personal friendships and that their children married each other, which is always like the first measure. It's like, you're not marrying to that family. So in the days when parents controlled those things, so they got along personally. And being able to, and then that goes into a whole place is that people have reasons for their opinions, and it's not because they're idiots, even though we would like to say that. They're just a dangerous idiot. Like they're not. They have reasons for their opinions. And we're supposed to also understand that they have, and to focus, like you saying, Susan, on other aspects of them, that a person is more than just their political opinions, no matter how loudly they say them and speak them. But it's very hard. It is very hard. And a lot of relationships are very challenged and very frazzled by the discourse. You know, think about the Jewish people during the Civil War. There were Jews on both sides, in the North and the South. It tore families apart. You know, how do you do? And then you really are at physical war. You know, there's always been, you know, the Jews in all the different wars. Like when there's stories about people like who end up like, not accidentally because they're soldiers, but killing somebody and going over to the enemy and seeing, like, hearing the person whisper the Shema and realize that they just killed a Jew. You know, somebody who's their family. I mean, you could say that about all of humanity, but a Jewish person is your more immediate family. And it's very tough times, very, very tough times. So your strategy is a good one. It is a good one. Yeah. And it's more, we'll just talk, the best way is to just talk about the politics of Persia, which, by the way, just so you know, that down to today in Iran, that they are still trying to, you know, make trouble for the Jewish people over. And Susan, you sent me that wonderful article about, you know, the people in Germany and their understanding of Purim and how they twist it into the Jewish people are bloodthirsty. They're more familiar with the Megillah than most of the Jewish people I know. They read it, they twist it, but they read it, and they have their things that they publish each year about how the Jews use the blood of, just like we use the blood of Christians to make our matzah, that we use the blood of Christian adults, not children, Christian adults to make hamantashen, and that our rabbis bless that, and they give the description of how the rabbis extract the blood from these people. They put them in a like a cylinder that has things that pierce their bodies, and then to make them bleed and collect their blood and put it in their, they said they put them in their pastries, and then they make blessings over them and enjoy the delicious pastries that celebrate their bloodthirstiness. This is down to today. I mean, I used to read this and think, well, you know, it was like people who were primitive, they were backward, they were this, like, nope. You have the people today who were like, the Jews caused coronavirus, that we introduced it, and that we introduced it so that we can wipe out the world and rule it, or that we introduced it so that we can come up with a vaccine and make a fortune off of the vaccine by trying to heal people, or that the Palestinians don't want the vaccine from us, from Israel, because they're convinced that the Israelis are trying to sterilize them and it's used for ethnic cleansing. Or, you know, like, it's like, you can't win, and people are coming up with this garbage as we speak. It's really horrifying. So in case we thought, oh no, this Purim story, you know, I don't even know if it really happened, it probably didn't happen, it's just a myth. It's like, well, let me just tell you something. If it didn't happen then, it's happening now, and it has always been happening. So this is an ongoing story. This is our reality. And yet we will take a break starting tonight, and we will flip the channel to the celebration, and we will celebrate what the Jewish people were able to achieve then, and kind of going to what Patricia says, like, is it possible? Like, can we do it? It's like, they did it then, we can do it too, and we can do it. But first we have to get ourselves all together, and we'll have a tipping point. We will have a tipping point. Renee.
So I'm sorry, but I started, like, what you were talking about that you said is out there. It's like, it seems so fanciful that it's like I'm laughing because it's hard for me to believe, right?
As far as like what people are saying, like down to today. Oh,
but then when you think about, how about the Jewish laser that started the forest fires?
Oh yes, that's right. The Jewish laser that was funded by money by the Rothschilds that started the forest fires in California. Now, yeah. I don't know about you, but I think that is as bizarre as, you know, the Jews killed Jesus, and the Jews are killing Christian children and baking the blood in the matzah. This is only like the latest version of it. And if it wasn't so horrible, it would be hilarious. Except, which is also kind of a little bit of the humor of Purim. If it wasn't so horrible, it would be hilarious. So at some points we talk about the horror part of it. And then at other times we talk about the hilarious part of it. It's like, you've got to be kidding. Here was this completely innocent people living in 127 provinces of Persia, minding their own business, being loyal Persian citizens. And they're like, oh, let's wipe them out. It's like, based on what? On what? Nothing. So there's always a story. You're the Bolsheviks, you're the communists, you're the Republicans, you're the Democrats, you're the leftists, you're Intifada, you're this, you're that. It's like everybody's got a reason. It's ethnic cleansing. It's like all of this stuff. So yeah, the story is ongoing. So use the day well. We have a lot of power in today. The Jewish people have a lot of power. It doesn't feel like it because we're such a speck, but we are a powerful speck, and God weighted our influence to be able to do that. Renee.
What you said about Lashon Hora towards the end, to me, was just so profound. It was really powerful. And I wanted to write it down.
Oh, as far as of why we don't speak Lashon Hara?
Yeah, like the intensity, like
the reason we don't speak Lashon Hara is because we do not want to open up the mouth of the prosecutor against us.
No, but you said something else afterwards. More recently, you said it had to do with just how it affects the whole divine.
Oh yeah, the divine flow of energy. It's when we do not speak Lashon Hara, it's like a vacuum. We create the space, and it pulls the divine energy towards us. Now, just so everybody understands, the pull of divine energy towards us doesn't mean like we get to rule the world and that we're looking to do anything. It's to the side of good. We're talking about the side of good versus the side of evil. And I know people don't like to talk about evil. They don't want to think that evil exists. It exists. And if we don't understand that, then we are really naive, very naive. So we are trying to pull the positive energy in our direction because we're in charge. We're kind of in charge of the faucet here, of making that happen to the benefit of all of humanity. It's not just for us. It is not just for us. We're here to serve humanity. That's our goal. All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful festive Purim. Make today count. And to the extent that you can make today count is how much joy you'll have tomorrow when we celebrate the time where we have joy and gladness. And I'll just say this, and I know we're a little late, I'm sorry.
Doesn't matter.
Just remember that when we make Havdalah every week, we always quote the Megillah. La Yehudim hayta ora v'simcha v'sason v'yikar. For the Jewish people, there was ora, there was light, there was gladness, there was joy, and there was honor. Kain tiheh lanu, so shall it be for us. We go into each and every week blessing ourselves and our families, that we should be like the Jewish people of Shushan and go out into the week with that same strength and that same approach. So Purim is really never over, both the challenge as well as the antidote to it. And so God willing, we will do that. So we'll have Purim starting tonight and tomorrow. Then we'll go into Shabbos and we'll have Havdalah and we'll echo Purim. And next week we'll echo Purim. And every Havdalah after that, we will keep Purim in mind so that we never leave it and always are with that.
Amen, Ellen. Can I ask you one more thing before you go bye-bye?
Sure.
Because you're talking divine words and very impactful, but so quickly you're on a accelerando in music terms that I cannot write quickly enough. I'm so sorry. And I really want to write 1, 2, 3, 4. And I only got to one that who tempts us? The Satan tempts us?
Yes, tempts us. Yes.
Satan
and then
tempts us. And then
okay.
what?
And then he accuses us.
After we did it?
After we did it, yep.
If we did it, yeah. And then?
Yeah, and then prosecutes us. Takes us to court.
Meaning?
Acts as the prosecuting attorney, just like if you have a court case, I can say so-and-so did something to me. And the judge was like, okay, file a case. And the prosecutor's like, there has to be a prosecutor to prosecute a case. And if the judge says, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing the case, then there is no case.
Okay, what's number 4?
And 4 is then who carries out, it's also the Malach HaMavet. It's also takes the form of the consequences, the punishment afterwards. But we're not really focusing on that part. But that's the That's the fourth.
that the Malach Hamaret, because I learned once that when we go up and there is a trial in Olam Haba, everything we say here, I think you taught us, bad about someone else, the same accusation comes back to us in heaven. Is that connected?
Probably. What we said. So there's another idea, which is another in your own self-interest, says that when you say something bad about somebody else, you acquire their averas, their sins, and they get your mitzvahs. So you have a
Wow.
little transfer of the account. It's like, well, did you really want to do that? It's like, don't do that.
Interesting. Mitzvah.
So you don't have to be, you actually don't have to be a spiritually advanced person to understand that we wouldn't want to do that. Like, I may not be at such a high level, but I know I don't want to lose whatever merits I have. And I certainly don't need anybody else's demerits coming into my account. It's like a person who has a joint account with a spouse or something who gambles, and they empty the account, and the other one says, like, I didn't do anything. It's like, well, you have a joint account.
Right.
You're going to be impacted. So our accounts are tied, and the mechanism for it is on Lashon Hara. So as we speak Lashon Hara about somebody, then we get their demerits and they get our mitzvahs. Like, I'm not interested in that for sure. And for sure I wouldn't be, because if it's somebody I'm speaking Lashon Hara about, there's already somebody who I have something negative to say about them. So I certainly don't want their demerits, and I certainly don't want them having my merits. So, and when we say something kind about somebody, we have a joint account with them as well. It's like we actually get added in. We share in it. Like we have that idea with a simcha, a Jewish simcha. We say Siman Tov and Mazel Tov, Yehei Lanu L'chol Yisrael. It will be for all of us, all the Jewish people. Your simcha is my simcha. When I share in it, it's not like, oh, I shared your simcha. It's like, I share in it. So we want to just make sure that the sharing goes in the right direction.
Very good. Oh my gosh, you're amazing. And it's the most important thing. Chafetz Chaim is amazing. There's this shalom. Erica sent me a
The
shalom
challenge. Yes.
That's amazing. If you want to tell everyone, I don't know how many are left.
I think there's just a few left. It's 20 days. I think we're on 15 days. It's called the Shalom Challenge through the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation. If you want to sign up for the last few days, you get an email each day with a little video about
very sweet.
Some aspect. Very sweet, just like a few minutes. It's very sweet.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is our goal. It says we are the people that need to be doing this work. All right, ladies, have
Thank you so much.
festive forum. Take care.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, and see you next week.
Thank you.
You made our fast now so meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you.
Yes. Bye-bye.